In this video, we're going to be taking a look at an upcoming mini gaming PC that's capable of running any AAA game at 1440p, and it all comes down to the APU and GPU they opted to use here. This is actually powered by the Ryzen Ai 9 HX370, and usually with mini PCs we only get integrated graphics, but this actually has a dedicated Nvidia GeForce RTX 4070. Hey, what's going on everybody? It's etaprime back here again. I've got early access to a really powerful mini PC that should be launching later on this year. The name isn't official, but when it comes to the overall shell, we've seen something very similar from a company known as Thunder Robot. In 2024, they released the Thunder Robot Mix, and that was actually powered by an Intel chip with an RTX 4060. But what we've got here is an upgraded version with a powerful Ryzen AI APU and an upgraded RTX 4070. In this video, we're going to see exactly what this thing can do. I've got a lot to cover, but before we get into it, I do want to mention that this video is sponsored by Vip-Urcdkey. I've been using this site for quite some time now. They offer Steam keys, Uplay, Ubisoft, but the main thing I pick up over here are Windows 11 Pro keys. And right now, if you use code ETA, you can get 25% off. So at checkout, we'll just enter the code ETA. That's going to bring the price down to $22.88. They're going to email you that key, and then you can activate Windows. Speaking of that, let's head over to a new PC that I recently built. As you can see, we're running Windows 11, and from Settings, we're going to go to Activation Settings. It's going to tell us that we're not active. We don't have a key installed, so we're just going to paste it right in here, choose Next. It's going to activate Windows for us, and we're ready to go. If you're in need of cheap Windows keys, I'll leave a link in the description, and remember, you can use code ETA for 25% off. At CES this year, I saw a lot of mini PCs. I mean, there were a ton of them there, but this one really piqued my interest because it's powered by the Ryzen AI chip paired up with an RTX GPU. When it comes to these small form factor units, we usually only get integrated graphics, but this is a full-fledged gaming machine. In the way of I/O, there's actually not a lot here. We do have a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, one full-size USB 3.2 port over here, and a 3.5mm audio jack. Over on the other side, which I would consider the rear of the unit, we have our power input, and this came with a 230 watt power supply. We've also got full-size HDMI, another full-size USB 3.2 port, and USB 4. So obviously, you'll need an adapter if you need more USB ports on this unit. It does have an easily accessible 2280 M.2 slot down here, but there's also one internally, so we can add two M.2 drives, and this is PCIe 4.0. You can do a total of 4 terabytes, so 2 terabytes each. And I'm told that the lighting on this will be controllable by the time this releases. The original, it was only blue just like it is here, so hopefully we do get a little bit of RGB control. And when it comes to the overall specs, like I mentioned, this is powered by the AMD Ryzen Ai 9 HX370. So we have 12 cores, 24 threads based on Zen 5. It's got the Radeon 890Mi GPU, and this one has 32 gigabytes of 7500 megahertz RAM. It's non-user upgradable because it's LPDDR5X, but instead of using that Radeon 890M, which is very capable for an iGPU, we've got a dedicated Nvidia RTX 4070 with 8 gigs of GDDR6 VRAM. This is a laptop variant RTX 4070, so it's not a full-powered desktop unit. This has been upgraded with Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4. We've got two M.2 SSD slots, both 2280, 2 terabyte each, up to 4 terabytes total, and I'm going to be running Windows 11 Pro. This should be releasing the second half of this year, and it's going to be coming from a company known as Chatray. At least they're going to be the original manufacturers of it. And if you take a look on AliExpress, you'll see they make all the mini PCs. There's a ton of companies that actually use their designs and just kind of rebrand everything. Before we get into testing here, there were a few things that I was interested in checking out and a couple things I wanted to show you. From the BIOS, I didn't find a way to adjust the TDP. It's a bit locked down, but we could use a third-party application with this Ryzen Ai 9 HX370. 12 cores, 24 threads, 32 gigs of 7500 megahertz RAM. We've still got access to the Radeon 890M, but of course we're not going to be using that when we game because we've got that Nvidia RTX 4070 laptop GPU. And this was one thing I wanted to check the TGP out on, just to see which version this is, if we've got a little bit of a boost over some of the lower end 4070s on the market. When it comes to CPU power, I've got CPU-Z right here. We'll just stress this out. You can see this jumps up to 64 watts down here with hardware info, and I have seen it drop down to around 48 while gaming. But yeah, I mean, 64 on this HX370 is going to be more than enough for what we've got here. Again, if we needed it, we could up this just a bit. Next up, let's check out this GPU, and we'll go ahead and run this. Board power draw up to 100 watts, and the chip power draw 85. So yeah, I've seen, I think the 75s, 85s, and then some of them do have a dynamic boost of 25 watts. So if we do have a dynamic boost while we're gaming, this could probably jump up to 100 watts with that RTX 4070. But even at 85 in this mini PC, I think we're going to see some really good 1440p performance. Now, the first thing I've got here are some benchmarks, and I wanted to give you a look at those on the CPU and GPU. Remember, on this system right now, we're only up to 64 watts on the HX370. Single core, 2,817. Multi-core looking pretty good here with 15,277. So we've got 12 cores and 24 threads to work with. Next up, GPU benchmark with that RTX 4070. 3D Mark Firestrike coming in with the total score of 25,681. And I also ran Time Spy. We got a pretty impressive score here of 11,918. Just judging by these 3D Mark synthetic scores, it looks like we're definitely going to be able to handle 1440p, but with the RTX 4070 laptop variant, we will need some DLSS to help out. First game we have here is Spider-Man 2, 1440p, very high, with DLSS set to balanced. And originally, I went into this, I wasn't exactly sure what was going on because we were dipping under 60 in some cases. As soon as I went to very high with it, RTX was automatically enabled. I did have to turn that off with the laptop variant of the RTX 4070. But with that completely off and not using frame generation, we're getting an average of 97 FPS with Spider-Man 2 on this system. I also tested out Hogwarts Legacy, and unfortunately at 1440p Ultra with this RTX 4070 in the mini PC, we were under 60 FPS, so I did have to enable DLSS frame generation. I was actually pretty surprised that it wouldn't handle this game at Ultra 1440 with no frame gen. Even with DLSS set to performance, there were areas where it would dip very, very low. Here's Forza Horizon 5, 4K Ultra, but I did turn ray tracing off, so RTX is completely off. Everything else is at Ultra. Again, it's just that ray tracing. It really does kind of put a hurting on this laptop variant. But it still looks great at Ultra, and I knew we'd have a pretty decent time at 4K, average of 90 FPS. Next game we have is Marvel Rivals, and to tell you the truth, I've only played this on iGPU so far, so I'm not exactly sure what to expect. I went into this at 1440 medium with DLSS set to balanced, and I turned VSync on, so we're only going to get up to 120, but as you can see from Afterburner in the top left-hand corner, we are over 100, so there's a chance I could have went into this at high with DLSS at balanced. Black Myth Wukong 1440, high, medium mix, DLSS set to 70%, just using the built-in benchmark here. We did average 83 FPS, but this is going to be really hard pressed to play this at 100% resolution high settings. And the final game we have here is God of War Ragnarok 1440p, high, DLSS is set to native, but I am using DLSS frame gen. We're up over 120 with it, and it's a really good experience. I mean, it feels great like this. Frame gen on lower end systems can introduce a lot of latency, but when I've got enough power to generate those frames easily, I don't notice much of a difference. It feels great like it is. The last thing I wanted to talk about here were CPU and GPU temps. This is something that could definitely be addressed before this thing's officially released, because at a 64 watt TDP on that HX370, our average gaming CPU temps were 72, but it did hit 94 while gaming in some cases. So it did hit thermal throttle, and the fan on this wasn't as loud as I thought it would be. I mean, I figured it'd be kicking up like a laptop sounding like a jet engine. So they could actually ramp that fan curve up a bit. And when it comes to the GPU, not too bad. We've got that 85 watt total graphics power. Average GPU temps, 68. Maximum I saw was 78 degrees Celsius. And the way the BIOS is set up right now, there's not a lot that I can control, so I can't make my own fan curve here. I can basically change the boot order over to USB, enable secure boot, all the basics. There's probably a hotkey combination to unlock the advanced settings, but I really haven't dove into it just yet. I mean, overall, it's not a bad little setup. Now, the price is going to be everything at the end of the day, and with the price of all these HX370 mini PCs without GPUs, most of them right now on the market are anywhere from $800 to $1,000. I could only imagine this thing's going to cost a grip given that it's got that chip plus a dedicated RTX 4070 on top. But as soon as I get more information, I will post it up in my community section. And if there's anything else you want to see running on this, just let me know in the comments below. But that's going to wrap it up for this one. Like always, thanks for watching.